जहाँ के खाने सभी मैंने छान डाले, सभी मैंने छान डाले, तेरे पार कना आया, तुझे यकीन यकीन बनाया, तुझे यकीन यकीन बनाया, तुझे यकीन यकीन बनाया, तुझे यकीन यकीन बनाया। वही रब है जिसने तुझको हमदर्द कर बनाया, हमें भीख मांगने को तेरा अरे ऐ खुदा के बंदो, अरे ऐ खुदा के बंदो, कोई मेरे दिल को ढूंढो, कोई मेरे दिल को ढूंढो, मेरे पास था अभी क्या, मेरे पास था अभी तो, अभी क्या हुआ खुदाया, तुझे हमद है खुदाया, तुझे हमद है खुदाया, न कोई गया न कोई गया, वही रब है जिसने तुझको हमदर कर बनाया, हमें भीख मांगने को तेरा रास्ता, हमें ऐ रज़ा तेरे दिल, हमें ऐ रज़ा तेरे दिल का पता चला, मुश्किल का पता चला, मुश्किल, हमें ऐ रज़ा तेरे दिल का पता चला, मुश्किल का पता चला, मुश्किल दर रौज़ के मुकाबिल, दर रौज़ के मुकाबिल, वो हमें तो नजर तो आया, दर रौज़ के मुकाबिल, वो हमें नजर तो आया, ये न पूछ कैसा पाया, ये न पूछ कैसा पाया, वो ये रब है जिसने तुझको हमदर कर बनाया, हमें भीख मांगने को तेरा रास्ता बताया, हमें भीख मांगने को तेरा रास्ता बताया।
Yes, fine. As long as you can hear me. For this session, I just want to touch on two names of the Prophet ﷺ that are very different, just two contrasting names, and kind of show both of their beauties in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. The first name is the name of the Prophet Ar-Rahim. Now, when you begin any verse of the Quran or any particular action, you generally say Bismillah ar-Rahman. Hadith is weak, but there are so many different narrations for the hadith that it generally takes it's taken to be strong in meaning, which is كل أمر ذي بال من يبدأ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Any action that doesn't begin with the name of God, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it doesn't have any reward. It's severed from reward. The reward that you would have received, you don't receive anymore. In that, you find two names of Allah, Ar-Rahman and Rahim, Allah's names. The name of Allah, Ar-Rahman, is a very important name because it's a name that can only be attributed to God. For instance, you can't today name yourself Allah. If you have a child, you can't name Allah. This in Arabic is called that it's the name of God's essence. God has two essential names. One is Allah and the other is Ar-Rahman. You cannot call anybody else Rahman. However, the other names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala generally can be used for other people. For instance, Ra'uf and Rahim in the Quran, Allah uses them for the Prophet ﷺ. What does Rahim mean? The word Rahim comes from the word Rahim or Rahman in the Arabic language, which means mercy. But it's used for the Rahim is the womb of the mother that contains the baby or the child. That's a root meaning. And that's generally inferred from that is that women, the kind of love that they show towards their children, the connection is much stronger than a father has to a degree with the child because of the womb connection that the mother has with the child. So generally it's translated as the merciful one, Ar-Rahim. I want to give you some examples of the mercy of the Prophet and then to contrast it with his characteristic Al-Jabbar, to contrast it with that. The Prophet is incredibly gentle and merciful person. In fact, the most merciful that God has ever created. I'm going to give you several examples of it. He never, alayhi salatu wasalam, looked at a particular person's social status or even their status in piety. I'll give an example. He's in trouble. Anybody chases you with a banana? You want banana? Between Eric is. He becomes banana Eric. Anyway. Give you several examples. The Prophet's attitude towards sinful people, for instance. Sinful people. A man came to the Messenger of God, alayhi salatu wasalam, and he, in this particular narration, he had committed an offense or a sin, a sin that pre-Islamic Arabs used to commit, which was, if they had daughters, often they would bury their daughters alive. So if they had a daughter, they would just bury them alive. And this man was not a Muslim. He came and he told the Prophet and he told him the whole story. In the story, his daughter helps him to dig the grave, not knowing it should be thrown in. At the end, he throws her in and he buries her alive. There was social pressures why they did these types of things. And he came to the Prophet and everybody wept on his story after he told him narrated his story. And the Prophet at the end of it said to him, if he wished for God's forgiveness, and he said, I wish for God's forgiveness. And he said, say the following, and he became a Muslim, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. It shows you kind of a great mercy that was contained within the message of God, a person. In another story, one of the men around the Masjid Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, his name is Nu'ayman. One of the in early Islamic problems he had was that he would drink alcohol. He would drink alcohol. And he would become drunk, and then some of the companions would hit him with their shoes to get him sober again, because he would kind of lose himself. And one day he had drank some alcohol, and they began to curse him, la'anahullah, in the presence of the Messenger of God. And the Messenger of God alayhi salatu became incredibly angry at that. And he said, do not curse him, for indeed yuhibbu Allah wa rasulah. He loves God and His Messenger. He then reformed this person and other people through a manner and a way that was very soft. Allah states in the Quran, if you were extreme with them, or if you were the word would translate as I would say, if you were extreme with them, they would have run away from your government or your presence. So he adopted a very soft process. And I'll give you another example. Ikrimah was the son of Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl was an arch enemy of the Prophet. He was killed in Badr by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Although he didn't land the first blow, he landed the final blow. Ikrimah was his son. Ikrimah became a Muslim. And in the presence of the Messenger of God, bear in mind his father was the enemy of the Prophet. The enemy. Somebody cursed his father, Abu Jahl. And the Prophet became incredibly upset with him and forbade him from doing so. In the presence of Ikrimah, generally, he forbade him, but especially in the presence of Ikrimah. Because regardless, at the end of the day, regardless if he was the enemy of the Prophet, he has a connection with him. It's his father. He was on the opposite side. But still, the Prophet was aware of his feelings and his emotions. In another narration, which is somewhat controversial, but I mention anyway, there was a man who came to the Messenger of God who had committed a particular indecency, adultery had committed, and he came to testify or to give self-testification, to admit it. This is really incredible. He came to the Messenger of Allah and sat with him and said, Ya Rasulullah, committed adultery. But there's something in mind. If there are not witnesses that witness adultery, then it's not a legal crime. What do I mean by that? A legal crime requires a penal punishment, of legal punishment, where, for instance, penal law dictates that if you steal something and if you're then convicted of it, then there's a punishment in Islam. If you do anything public to disrupt public order and you're convicted of it, you're given a punishment, like in this country. But if you do something privately, and nobody knows of it, then there's no legal punishment for that, except there is a punishment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. It's a sin that you committed, and God will, unless you repent. So there were no witnesses to his adultery. So he came to the Messenger of God, and Ya Rasulullah committed adultery. And the Prophet ﷺ turned his face away from him, and he said, before turning his face, so he said, okay, you did some fahsha, you did something wrong. Okay, turned his face. Meaning he almost decreased the importance of what he did. In what sense? He said, oh, basically you don't really know what you're saying, you're not of sound mind here. You must have done something and you thought it was zina. And he turned his face away from him. So the Prophet no, committed zina. And the Prophet said, okay, so you must have flirted with a woman. And he turned his face away again from him. So the Rasulullah committed zina. He said, so you must have touched a woman, but you did not commit zina. And then the fourth time, Ya Rasulullah, I committed zina. Now, for self-testimony, it's necessary that you give self-testimony, repeat it 4 times. You said you've done it, but you repeat it 4 times. It serves the same as witnesses witnessing your crime. And at the fourth, the Messenger of Allah began to weep. And he said, what have you left me of mercy to give to you? What have you left me? For you could have gone home and repented to God and He would have forgiven you. And the point there was the Prophet ﷺ did not want a legal punishment for him. He wanted him to repent to God because he didn't do it publicly. Which shows us that whatever sin we have, most of people's sins are private. Most of them are private. Whatever sins, even if they be public, that to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again in private will receive a great maghfirah, a great forgiveness from Allah Jalla wa'ala. He constantly throughout his life would never allow any person that came into his gathering to feel uncomfortable. They said, one of the companions said that when we sat in his presence, it felt like we were the biggest Gnostics, the biggest men of God in the world. Regardless of whoever we were, it made us feel like that. Nowadays, if a person is religious, and I want to contrast with kind of what we have now, where people who are what we call this kind of common word that we use practice, I never liked the word. You know, when you talk generally like that, you say, oh, he's religious, or he's practicing, or he's a namazi banda, he's a Sufi, whatever word you give to them. Somebody asked me once, or said to me, he said, oh, that particular person, is he practicing or not? Arabic word is mutadayin. We have no word in classical Arabic for practicing, no word. We don't have a word for it in Arabic. For practicing Muslim. We have Muslim and that's it. Everything else is a spiritual state. The word practicing is very ambiguous. What does that mean? So if somebody prays Salah, they're practicing people. But those same people are backbite, but there'll be no issue, they're still practicing. You see? When the Prophet said, Al-Ghibatu ashaddu min az-zina. Backbiting is worse than fornication. So if a person sins in a different way, he is less practicing. But if he sins in a particular way, he is more practicing. We don't have that concept in our religion. Our religion is rooted in spirituality and ihsan, perfection. And he, alayhi salatu, saw that. In one narration, he was sitting with his companion Abu Bakr Siddiq, and bear in mind that Abu Bakr Siddiq is his closest companion, best friend, and a great man of God. And he said that Abu Bakr Siddiq, in one narration, if you put all of the Ummah's deeds on one side and Abu Bakr on the other, they wouldn't be able to outweigh him. But then he said in one narration, it's not because Abu Bakr, he prays more than you, or he fasts more than you, or that he does more jihad than you. It's because God has placed a secret in his heart that none of you have, which is essential love and attachment to the Prophet ﷺ, which they had but not at the same amount as Abu Bakr Siddiq. This in no way is kind of, I'm not here promoting the fact of promoting fahsha or laxity in practice of praying to God. Just trying to show you how the Prophet ﷺ treated people and how he reformed them. The opposite or the contrasting attribute of the Prophet ﷺ, because you'll hear a lot of this today anyway, about the Prophet ﷺ being merciful, is Jabbar. I gave a small talk, I want to repeat some parts of it in the winter spring Mawlid about the Prophet ﷺ being Jabbar. Now, a lot of us forget this, you know, you have in Islam, Tasawwuf, Sufis, you know, people of spirituality. We don't have them anymore. Now we just have a lot of kind of charlatan behavior, pseudo, quasi type of Tasawwuf, where you have a guy with a big beard, a big turban and a big jalaba, a jubba, and with some fanciful words. All of a sudden everybody's giving bay'ah to him, mashallah. Pir Sahib is landed, and the spiritual master of our times. You know, I saw a leaflet once. There's this particular guy that I know from childhood, and cynical years. He got this leaflet one day. Low, his face was, countenance was. Anyway, he was on the poster, and it said at the top, the Sufi Gnostic of the 21st century. If I wasn't about to choke on my tea right there, I definitely felt a warm feeling throughout my body. The ease of the way we apply titles to people. Spiritual master. Now, when we see that type of person, this person demands spirituality, we consider him to stand on the Musalla every day. That's the kind of understanding we have. Well, it's not actually the case. A man of spirituality is one who controls his desires, be they anger, be they whatever they may be. That's a man of spirituality. In fact, a lot of early Sufis were warriors as well. Sheikh Shamil, for instance, the great Caucasus, from the Caucasus area of Russia, Shishan, was one of the greatest warriors, soldiers who fought against the Russians, and he was a Naqshbandi Sufi. I picture them on the internet. And there's these kind of great mythical stories about him, how they surrounded his house once and they cut off the water supply, and they saw a man running out of the house. He killed one and jumped over the line and then disappeared into the forest again. You have these mythical kind of stories about him. But they were great warriors. There is no man who is greater than Abu Bakr Siddiq from the companions of spirituality. Yet he was a courageous man, fought in war. The uncle of the Prophet Hamza, Talha, in Uhud, Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab was maybe 7 foot tall. Some say that he was 7'5", 7'6". I'm not very sure. I'm 6'1", but 7'6" is pretty tall. And Sayyidina Umar was something very special about him. He was very, very muscular. Very muscular. I don't want to use kind of common terms that they use for muscular people these days, for Sayyidina Umar, but he was seriously muscular. And he had very big hands, very big shoulders, he'd throw people around. What's very surprising actually is the following, that he frowned upon people having large stomachs, for instance. You know, in our religion, men, for instance, in our tradition, are not allowed to be overweight. You understand? Men are not supposed to have stomachs. Women can have weight in our tradition. Women can. Say that Aisha, mother, gave her a lot of food before she married the Prophet to get a bit bigger, to feed a little more. She was a bit underweight. Women can be slightly have more weight. Men, there's no reason. Men have to be. Sayyidina Umar saw a man, he was a little, and he poked her on somebody else, meaning you could have shared your food out. And so what does that tell you? Sayyidina Umar was incredibly careful about his weight. He was incredibly strong. The companion Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, for instance. Now the Prophet ﷺ himself, his physical features, in terms of his body, the hadith is very clear that he had a flat stomach. And not only that, in one narration it suggests that there was kind of lines in his stomach area. It shows that all of these muscles were very prevalent on his body, alayhi salatu wasalam. You see, he was a perfect body. And he was incredibly strong. He, alayhi salatu wasalam, the strength of 300 men. 300 men. 30 men of general. Yeah? 300 men, he was that strong. However, the point I want to make about Jabbar, his particular attribute of glory, is that he was incredibly courageous. And I want to talk about several stories in relation to his great, great courage and his strength. Because we often have the merciful prophet, but do not think he was the passive prophet in that sense. He was the active prophet. He was the prophet that engaged when engagement was needed, especially in war. I want to mention several things about his expeditions, and some of the youngsters probably like the kind of, the what Power Rangers and these types of things. So they always seem kind of warlike scenarios. And with ISIS these days, you have to be very careful of what we promote, what we don't. And like I mentioned, the Winter Spring Mawlid, the problem we have now is groups like ISIS, which is it's a complete aberration. It's a disgusting collection of either confused or willful fools that are willing to do anything to promote kind of their internal passions and desires. Sayyidina Ali in the battle once refused to kill somebody because he spat in his face. He about to kill him, he spat in his face, he put his sword, he sheathed his sword. And the man said, "Why didn't you kill me?" He said, "Because I was going to kill you for the sake of God. But now I have to kill you for my own sake." He just spat in my face and said, "I will not kill you for that." Meaning it was for the sake of God I came here. So we have to reclaim a kind of our courageous Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. We have to reclaim his way of and not let these kind of people who constantly are plugging jihad and have no understanding of what it means. I'm going to mention several stories. The one famous one which I mentioned in that particular verse was about Ubay ibn Khalaf. Ubay ibn Khalaf. He was a great enemy of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the arch enemies. And I'll repeat the story if you didn't hear it last time. He was riding a horse and he stopped. I think he was just walking with the horse in fact. And he met the Messenger of Allah in Mecca. he met the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. Prior this was prior, and he said, I'm priming this horse, priming it. This is post-Makkah. I'm priming this horse, feeding it. You know, in Pakistan, most of you are Pakistanis, yeah? So forgive me for if you're not Pakistani. I don't have Bangladesh, that's for saying that. You know what they do? It's haram, they make dogs fight. You know, have you seen a dog fight before? A good old dog fight. Haram, by the way. They make dogs fight in Pakistan. What they do is feed the dog with the best food that money can buy. They give it kyo, makhan, all of these foods. They put it in like a special dog has. They even have a special dog coat for it. They treat the dog better than the women. This dog is like their prized possession. And what do they do when the dog loses? You know, they kill it most times. But the point was feeding. So this man had primed his horse, fed it the best food, and he said to the Messenger of God that I'm going to slay you with this horse. I'm going to ride this horse and I'm going to kill you with it. And the Prophet said, it's not a threat that you give the Messenger of God. It doesn't take threats very lightly, and nor does Allah Jalla wa'ala take a threat lightly to his most beloved. So the Prophet said, nay, rather I will slay you. When the Messenger of Allah promises something is going to happen, I promise you that. In his entire life, we only have one narration that I can recall where he cursed people by name. Bear in mind, he didn't curse anybody by their name. In Uhud, the battle that we're going to look at, he was exhorted by the Sahaba. They asked him to curse the Quraysh, because if he cursed them, God's punishment is coming if he curses them. And he said, I've not been sent for this. I've been sent as a mercy to the world, not to curse. However, there's one narration, and that narration is in Mecca. When he was in Mecca, he was praying his prayer outside of the Kaaba, and some of the people, they gathered together, and they took the bones, the carcass of a dead animal, and they threw it on top of the best of creation, alayhi salatu wasalam. He was covered in it, and he was on the floor, and his daughter, Sayyidah Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, she was a very young child at that time, she came running out of the house. She literally assisted the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam in a state of emotion, weeping while she was only a young girl, seeing what happened to her father, and she took him home. Seeing the state of his daughter, and he said in the famous hadith, Fatima is a part of me, he cursed 3 people. All of those people, they died. So when the Messenger of God mentions you by name, for success, you are guaranteed, and for failure, you are guaranteed. So he said to him, Ubay ibn Khalaf, he said, nay, rather I will slay you. Meaning now he's a dead man. He's a dead man. So they went to battle. In battle line, Uhud, the Prophet ﷺ again, and the way that Uhud was, that the Messenger of Allah was with Abu Bakr throughout the battle. Throughout the battle, Abu Bakr Siddiq. Sayyidina Ali was given tasks. So Sayyidina Ali would be at the front, he would come in, and the Prophet ﷺ would say, 16 that way. So he would go, he would kill 16 and then come back. So his job was to come back in, and the Prophet ﷺ would send him out. Sayyidina Ali was he was a young boy, he was still a young boy, compared to modern standards of what a boy and a man is. He was a teenager. And he was right at the front with his uncle Hamza, woman, both of them at the front. And every time a group of people said that, he was sent there to deal with him. He had lost count how many people he had killed. At one point, he killed, I think, something like 30 or 40 in a row. So Abu Bakr Siddiq wouldn't move from the side of the Prophet ﷺ. At one point, there was a famous Sahabi, his name is Talha. Talha is the one who was literally jumping in front of the Messenger of Allah to take arrows in his chest. And he carried the Prophet ﷺ on Uhud. The Prophet ﷺ on that day had 2 sets of chainmail, and he carried him. Talha was struck, every part of his body was injured. And said, the Prophet ﷺ sent Abu Bakr to find him. He said, look for Talha. Said Abu Bakr didn't move, because he was said, I cannot leave you alone here. I'm defending you. And they renamed Yawm al-Uhud that day. They named it Yawm Talha, the day of Talha, because of his courage on that day. At one point, the Sahaba were together and they saw Ubay ibn Khalaf coming, big man, coming on his horse. He's got his big stallion ready. He's a man of courage now, all of a sudden. He's got his spear in hand, armed to the teeth. It's all ready now. I'm going to kill, he thinks, the Messenger of God والسلام, from a distance. So now the Prophet is surrounded by Sahaba. Great people like Umar ibn Khattab. I mean, you're not going to really want to go into that area. Abu Bakr Siddiq, people like Talha, people saying Ali, saying Hamza, all these great warriors. He's on horseback, so he thinks. And the Prophet, they unsheathe and they walk towards him. The Prophet stops them and says, move. Let him come. So you can imagine the scene. The Messenger of God standing at this much of a distance and his horse coming. The Prophet takes the spear as he's coming and throws it at him. He throws it at him. He clips a part of his neck just here. Just clips it. Falls off his horse and he runs. And he says, shouting, screaming, I have been, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ has slain me. And he's running. And all he has on his neck is like a paper cut on his neck. Just like a paper cut. He runs back. After the battle, he's weeping, crying. A dead man, look what happened to me. Abu Sufyan says to him, what's your issue? Ubay, you've got a paper cut on your neck. He said, you don't understand. He said, he said to me that he's going to slay me. He said, this injury, this paper cut that you said, it hurts more than the piercing of a spear in my chest. Hurts more than that. Sometime later, he died from that exact injury. And the Messenger of Allah said after that, he said, if my saliva were to have touched him on that day, he would have died. Because of the promise, وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. Allah says, you did not throw, and you threw. Verily your Lord threw on your behalf. So this shows the courage of the Messenger of Allah. On the same day, the Prophet was carrying the sword. And not only is he the courageous one, he's the one who courage is sought from. Courage is sought from. So if you're not a very courageous person, if you're like, some men at night, something like, they hear something downstairs, like a banging sound, or a door closing, and they'll tap their wife and they say, Goody, go check with them. or they'll see a spider in the room, and a woman you expect jumps on the sofa. If you've seen Scooby-Doo, in Scooby-Doo, you see Scooby-Doo jumping into the arms of Shaggy, yeah? And the man sees it, and the woman screams, and before she knows it, she's probably holding her husband up from the spider. So courage is kind of declined in current times. It can be a mouse, it can be a burglar, it can be a spider, it can be an earwig. I see many accounts where the brothers need to man up a little bit. For some people, they lack a bit of courage. But the Messenger of Allah, not only is he the courageous one, he's the one that transfers courage into people. He makes those who are not very courageous incredibly courageous, and those who are incredibly courageous into super courageous. And one of those examples is Abu Dujana. Abu Dujana is a Sahabi already known for his courage. Abu Dujana was not the most handsome one. That's not, because some Sahaba were incredibly handsome. So they had that feature that they were known by. That Sahabi was incredibly handsome. There were Sahaba who were incredibly gifted in terms of their voice. One of them, the Prophet would have to tell him to stop singing poetry in case he shatters the hearts of people, women especially in the narration. Other Sahaba were known for, Abu Dujana wasn't known for those things. What Abu Dujana was known for was his courage. You don't want to meet Abu Dujana in a dark alleyway and be his enemy, put it that way. Very muscular, very tall, wields a sword, a very big sword, like it were a wooden stick. On that day, the Prophet ﷺ had a sword in his hand. So this sword is now the sword of the Messenger of God. Not only is it Dhul Fiqar, the sword of the Messenger of God, but it has now the power of the Messenger of God imbued within that sword. So the Prophet ﷺ holds it up and he says, who will do this sword and do it justice? Fulfill the right of this sword. Everybody now, you don't know what the Messenger of Allah wants from you. What does that mean? What's the right of the sword? The Sahaba a little bit reluctant, some of them. Because can we really fulfill what the Messenger wants, alayhi salatu wasalam? Can we really fulfill what he wants? The standard that he wants? He said you're reluctant. They were reluctant, would never ask him questions in case revelation came against them. They would just sit there quietly. They feared if I say something, revelation comes, big trouble. Because the Prophet ﷺ told them that what misguided Bani Israel were their constant questioning of prophets. So they ask any question. So Abu Dujana is looking from a distance. I think I can. He just walks forward and he says, Messenger of Allah, Ya Rasulullah. He said, what's the right of this sword? He said, it's to take the sword and use it until it's broken. That's the right of this sword, until it's broken. I mean, you got to fight with this sword until there's no sword left. Abu Dujana said, alright, that's the sword over there. He takes his turban. What color was his turban? His turban was red. He was the only Sahabi permitted to wear a red turban. Takes a red turban, red color, blood there as well, wraps it around his helmet, and the way he walks up, you know when you see them lads walking on the street, because they're trying to impose themselves, you know, or when people make the tawaf of the Kaaba, they stick their chest out. God doesn't like that. In the tawaf it's allowed, but God doesn't like people walking like that. In fact, God detests people walking like that. The reason I mention this is, we have this big da'wah craze now in the UK, and there are a lot of these guys of cool, rad, bench, ghetto, da'is, du'a, giving da'wah, yeah bro, you don't know. Walking around like they're, you know, they're devout, and the way they swagger. This is not from our religion. Our religion is a religion of piety. Our religion is a religion of humility. We're people of humility. We don't go out there walking in a manner that will almost promote our internal diseases, to promote real ostentation, show off. So God doesn't like that. God doesn't like us walking like that in that manner. Our pride. But Abu Dujana walked like that. He took the sword, started walking. But you know whose sword I have? He knows that. But the Messenger of God sword in my hand. Abu Dujana went to him. The Prophet ﷺ said, God detests that type of posture walking, except in situations like this, when God allows it to scare the people, to show them who's coming, what's coming, what punishment's coming to them. And bear in mind, Abu Dujana did break that sword on everybody, on literally everybody. But this was a transferal of a courageous man who becomes incredibly courageous. Another transferal that I want to talk about is Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is a Sahabi. Does anybody know how tall he is? Very short. He's around about like 5 foot something. Yeah, he's mostly for 5 foot something. Like 5'4", 5'3", maybe even shorter than that, maybe 5 foot. Who knows? Allah knows. But Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is very short. I'll tell you how he converted to Islam. He was a shepherd. And he had some sheep in Mecca. And he was looking after them for another person. The Prophet ﷺ was walking by with Abu Bakr Siddiq. And he says, what's your name? He says, my name is Abdullah. Whose sheep are these? Whose goats are these? Well? Maybe at a mixture. He says, they are so-and-so's, I look after them. He says, can we have some milk from them? He says, no. He says, they're not my goats. I can't give you the milk because they're not mine. The Prophet ﷺ immediately saw in him signs of excellence, a man of trust, a man of trust. And he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, the best of you in the times of ignorance will be the best of you in Islam. So he said to him, asks him, he said, do you have a goat that doesn't give milk? He said, yeah, we have one that doesn't give milk. He said, bring that goat in. He said, what for? He said, just bring it. So he brings the goat to the Messenger of Allah. The Messenger of Allah milks the goat with no milk and fills the bucket up with milk. At that miracle, he converts to Islam, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He became later one of the 4 muftis of the Abdullahs. The 4 Abdullahs were all muftis of the Sahaba. On the day of Badr, they showed the courage that the Prophet inserted in his people's heart. He's a short man, and he goes after one person. He's going to hit, the hit's going to be good. So the most sought after head in the Quraysh was Abu Jahl. 2 young boys who crept in to the battle, there were 2 brothers. So these 2 brothers, they were 10 or 11 years old, and they wanted to fight. So the Prophet ﷺ said to them, they gathered in the masjid to recruit. So they were tiptoeing at the back like this. So the Prophet ﷺ caught them, and said, come here, what do you want? He said, look, Ya Rasul, we want to fight. He said, look, the sword is as big as you want to fight. Yeah? He said, yeah, we want to fight. Seriously, we want to go, we want to fight. So he said, okay, he said, okay, you can fight, but only one of you. You can have a wrestling match, whichever one wins. So he said first, the older one he said first. And then he said, no, have a wrestling match, whichever one wins, that one will go to battle. So the younger one said, the older one said, look, they kind of semi-selected you anyway. Let me beat you, and we'll both go on. So he pins him, and he says, yeah, so look, I'm stronger than the older one. The older one, you said you could go anyway. So they both go to battle, swearing that they're going to kill Abu Jahl. And what do? They chop down the horse of Abu Jahl. And Abu Jahl falls to the floor. So they were responsible for taking him down. Then Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, his short man, walks on top of Abu Jahl's chest. He stands there, on top of his chest, looking at him. Abu Jahl looks up at him. He says, anybody but you. He said, if he was a big warrior, if he was Umar, Hamza, you. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. The shortest guy in the army is going to kill me. And he said, no, you're going to get it today. Eh? So he said, okay, in one syllable, he said, if you're going to kill me, chop it here, right here. Not here. He said, why? He said, because when you put all the heads together, at least make one the high street. He's even arrogant in his death, Abu Jahl. Okay, fair point. So he chops his head, he ties it up in there, and then he drags it all the way back. So, but this was a courage that the Prophet transferred into just a little man. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, who became the greatest faqih, one of the greatest jurist scholars amongst the Sahaba. Next, I want to mention a couple of. I'll do 5 minutes and then we'll take question answers. Which I mentioned last time as well in the talk on the Mawlid, which was about Safina, Mawla Rasulillah. Safina is, although generally a girl's name, Safina. Safina in Arabic means a big boat, by the way. In modern standard Arabic, anyway. Safina was a Sahabi, he was a servant of the Prophet. Safina. He was a servant of the Prophet and he had one special skill, and that was that he could talk to lions. He could talk to lions, literally converse with lions. And the reason he did that, one day, the 7 narrations I mentioned to you, he was walking, the Prophet sent him to Yemen. In Yemen there was a qadi, a judge, who the Prophet had previously sent. His name was Mu'adh ibn Jabal. He was a judge that the Prophet was sent from Medina Munawwara. So Safina's on the way and he sees this big lion, a humongous lion. What's the lion from Lord of the Rings? Not Lord of the Rings, from Narnia. What's his name? Aslan. Bigger than Aslan, maybe twice the size, if that's possible. A big lion steps in front of him. Now, considering all you courageous people, if a lion steps in front of you, you'll probably wrestle it. But generally, people like me will run. And so this lion steps in front of him and he doesn't know what to do. He's thinking, run, you're going to outrun a lion, be consumed. I don't think he wanted to do that. So he walked up to the lion and he said, Ana Mawla Rasulillah. I am the servant of the Messenger of God, said to the lion. They say that the lion nudged him with his shoulder, nudged him and started walking. And led him out of, he was lost you see, led him out of the area he was and onto the path to Yemen. And then roared once he had left. In another story, some Sahaba came to visit him and there was a lion in the way. And they saw Safina come out of the house. He took the lion by its ear, lifted it up like that. Said, Ana Mawla Rasulillah. I'm the servant of the Messenger of God. Either you leave or you'll be in trouble. And the lion just slowly walked out. In another narration, he shipwrecked Safina. He's become like a mythical character now. He shipwrecked again. This lion happens to turn up, or he lives there. And all he says is, Ana Mawla Rasulillah. I am the servant of the Messenger of God, alayhi salatu wasalam. The courage that Safina had was what? Is as Imam Busiri states that Man takum bi Rasulillahi nusratuhu. That I'm going to give you the meaning of the line, which is the Sahaba are aided with the help of the Prophet ﷺ, even causing lions to retreat to their den. That's how powerful the Sahaba were. Now, I want to finish up with just bringing the two together. You see very clearly the Prophet ﷺ is courageous and jabbar against the enemy, and he's merciful to the believers. وَبِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. With the believers, he is the merciful one. And we exhort, especially today and every day to follow. There are some people that are making YouTube videos and other things online, saying that for some reason people get together to celebrate the birth of the Messenger of Allah, and they think we have candles and a cake. Some people do have a cake, unfortunately. And we have party poppers, and we put a chair out, which I can't see anyway. No, we gather to remember the Prophet all of the time. Because people even knew how many mawlids we do in the year. Probably hundreds of mawlids in the year. This month is more important only because it gives extra emphasis to the whole occasion. And the point I want to finish with was this. The Arabs, they loved their months. They had sacred months. Dhul Hijjah, the Hajj month, was a month of was a sacred month before Islam. Rajab was an important month before Islam. Muharram was a special month before Islam. The question is, why was the Messenger of Allah not born in any of those months? They were special months. You see, Muharram, Sayyidina Adam turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sayyidina Musa was given, alayhi salam was given a great opening. Some say he split the Red Sea on the 10th of Muharram. You see, there will be great moments happening in Muharram. Dhul Hijjah, the story of Hajj. Why was not the Messenger of Allah born in any of those months? The great months, everybody accepts, the Arabs accept. Why was he born in Rabi' Awwal? What is Rabi'? Rabi' is spring month. Spring, Rabi', that month has zero importance amongst Arabs. Arbitrary. It has no importance. Just like another month that has no importance. Why was he not born in the sacred month? Say Muhammad ibn Ali al-Maliki states, God, Allah Jalla wa Ala, wanted to reserve an entire month that was only known for him. That he would not share in glory with any other person in that month. Such that when you mention that month, the only thing that you can think of or remember is the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam. And the amazing thing is, if people disagree with getting together to remember the Prophet or agree with it, they both know what Rabi is. They both know what Rabi Awwal is. They both groups know what the Mawlid is. And the important thing is that to take advantage of the month for all of us, to get closest to the Prophet, but however not to restrict it. If you're kind of a 12th Rabi Awwal, 15th of Sha'ban, 27th of Ramadan type of people, this is a bid'ah. This is an innovation in Islam to turn up for single days to pray, go to sleep a bit Fajr. We have something all around the year which is to remember the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu. We'll take questions for the last 5 minutes. Inshallah, that makes sense. Excellent. Less for me, the better. I'll see everybody tonight. I think there's a golden party tonight. Tonight? Party? The word ihtifal Arabic is the party. I'll tell you one thing. If you think the mawlids are good here, the mawlids are in heaven are on another level. Because the mawlids of Jannah have the Messenger of Allah seated on the stage. Do you not think there'll be mawlids in heaven? Do you not think so? Don't you think people are going to get together, some ihtifalat, great ceremonies in praise of the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam? When Hassan ibn Thabit would stand on the minbar and praise the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sahabi, he said, alayhi salatu, the Messenger of Allah said, that Hassan is aged by spirit, he is aged by Jesus, praising the Messenger of God. Do you not think that he'll have a minbar in heaven praising the Messenger of God? Those mawlids will have unlimited food, which is brought to the food. Unlimited food, unlimited blessing, and imagine the types of people who will be attending those types of mawlids. Abu Bakr, the great prophets of God as well. Because bear in mind, the great prophets of God on the night of Mi'raj, of Isra, in Masjid al-Aqsa, in Bayt al-Maqdis, in the Masjid, recognize the excellence of the Prophet above all of them. He surpassed every prophet in external and internal beauty. Imam Busiri states, which is, and he actually, Imam Busiri states that they were like a drop in the ocean compared to the excellence of the Messenger of God, of what God had endowed him with. So inshallah, see everybody Asr will be at 3:15 inshallah.
Break. When it was on before on the webcam, it was like camera rejection. It was really wrong.
That's how the webcam do it.
Sometimes the strongest issues historical the majority of these stories are said about only the definitively said by the state of they do bring the full data. So the majority of the stories have noted. That's why we said the moment that we don't discuss about the so whenever we do.
The voice of the actions are being organized. Ready? Good on. You can't give nobody 15 is 4, isn't it? 15 is 4, isn't it?
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
سمع الله لمن حمده. الله 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 السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Breaking out to the
Send us pictures, please.
Where's Auntie? Where's Auntie? Leave her alone. Thank you. What are you used to? Are you used to it? Did you give money to them? No. Okay? Stop saying that. Stop it.
Are you going to come back then? Are you going to come back then?
If I do this, start up with the whole
Yeah?
Hello. So,
No. I'm not your friend.
hello. Where you going? In your bike. You gonna go all the way home?